Good morning. It's my distinct honor to welcome all of you here this morning to honor our veterans. It is a special day at Forest Hills Central as we honor our veterans, and also later we'll dedicate the Veterans Wall of Honor for all of the FHC grads who have served in the armed forces. When Francis Scott Key wrote the Star-Spangled Banner almost 200 years ago, he called America the land of the free and the home of the brave. Those words are as true today as they were then. Throughout the nation's history, American soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen have bravely answered the call to defend our freedom, to aid our friends and allies, and to turn back aggressors. We can never fully repay our debt of gratitude to the more than 650,000 American service members who died in battle, or the 1.4 million who were wounded. We can, however, recognize and thank the 25 million veterans still living today. These words are inscribed on the Korean War Memorial in Washington, D.C. It says, "Our nation honors her sons and daughters who answered the call to defend a country they never knew and a people they never met." Those words apply equally to many of our World War I veterans, World War II, Vietnam War, and Gulf War veterans as well. They apply to today's active duty service members, tomorrow's veterans, who are helping to maintain peace throughout the world. Today it's our privilege to say thank you to all of the America's veterans, especially those who are a part of our Forest Hills Central community. We want to let you know that we appreciate you for your service and honor you for your sacrifices. The price of freedom is high. We cannot afford to forget those willing to pay it. Today we celebrate you, America's veterans, for keeping this nation the land of the free and the home of the brave.
You may be seated. Again, we welcome our local veterans and thank the McDonald-Osmer American Legion, Post 451, Commander Clay West, and Adjutant John Friedley for helping us organize today's events. Today we meet on the 101st anniversary of the World War I armistice on November 11th, 1918 at 11 a.m. in the morning. When the field and the machine guns fell silent, veterans returned home, and those that gave the ultimate sacrifice were mourned. Today, our speakers, students, veterans, current service members, our choir and wind ensemble will honor those that live and have lived in our community who gave so much to our country from the Civil War to the War on Terror. We thank the McDonald-Osmer American Legion Post 451 of Ada Cascade for the presentation of the colors today. At this time, the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by McDonald-Osmer Post 451 Commander Clay West. Clay served in Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2007 and Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan in 2008. He is now Assistant United States Attorney here in Grand Rapids and the commander of the American Legion Post. Mr. Clay West.
Thank you. Please rise and join me with a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. West. Let us honor and respect our country by non-service members removing their caps and everyone standing at attention, placing their hands over their hearts as the FHC Wind Ensemble proudly leads us in the playing of our national anthem. We encourage you to sing along as we salute the fallen and those that have served our country proudly. Please rise. Thank you. You may be seated. Thank you to the FHC Wind Ensemble. As you entered the gym, you may have noticed the empty table here on stage. It is the missing man table, and it is reserved for fallen comrades in arms. This symbolizes that they are with us, here in spirit. We should never forget the brave men and women who answered our nation's call to serve and serve the cause of freedom in a special way. We are forever mindful that the sweetness of enduring peace has always been tainted with the bitterness of personal sacrifice. We are compelled to never forget that while we enjoy our daily pleasures, there are others who have endured the agonies of pain, deprivation, and death. I would like to explain the meaning of the items on this special table. The tablecloth is round to show our everlasting concern. The cloth is white to symbolize the purity of their motives when answering the call to serve. The single red rose reminds us the lives of these Americans and their loved ones and friends who keep the faith while seeking answers. The yellow ribbon symbolizes our continued uncertainty, hope for their return, and determination to account for them. A slice of lemon reminds us of their bitter fate, captured and missing in a foreign land. A pinch of salt symbolizes the tears of our missing families who long for answers decades after their uncertainty. The lighted candle reflects our hope for their return, dead or alive. The Bible represents the strength gained from faith to sustain us and those lost in our country. The glass is inverted to symbol their inability to share toast, and the chair is empty to symbolize our dear missing friends. Please take a moment and give thought to those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice for our nation, some of their families are here with us today. Those men and women who fought for everything we are and everything we've yet to become. Give honor to their sacrifice, and we thank you. For love of country, they accepted their final outcome. And today, we pay special tribute to one of our own. Please join me in a moment of silence for a dear friend, a fellow Ranger, Army paratrooper, state police trooper, and a good man who we lost just 2 weeks ago, Mr. James Oliver Twist. May his family accept our heartfelt sorrow and the comfort that his memory will live on here at FHC, and may he rest in peace. Please join me in a moment of silence. Today, we pay tribute to all of our hometown heroes, Ada and Cascade residents that served honorably in our armed forces. We are joined by local veteran organizations like the American Post or Legion Post 451. We have Forest Hills and Forest Hills Central alumni present among us, along with family and those currently attending FHC. I would like to offer a special welcome back and hello to Mr. Brian and Julie Delaney, who have traveled here today from Las Vegas, Nevada. All 4 of their children went on to serve in the armed forces in the Air Force. Brian Jr., Jessica, Neil, and Alan are but an example of the outstanding commitment and sacrifice that families like the Delaney's have made here at Forest Hills Central High School. Thank you for making the trip back to Forest Hills Central. Thank you to all of you for making the trip back to here at Forest Hills Central. Some of you, it's been decades since you've been back. To all, we welcome you and hope that today's ceremony can properly honor you for your services and for your sacrifices. Please enjoy the playing of our Armed Forces Salute by the FHC Wind Ensemble as our choir assembles for their next song. As we pay tribute to each branch of the armed services, we encourage service members to rise when their particular branch of service is recognized if they are able to. Thank you, FHC Wind Ensemble. We appreciate the tribute. And now, as we wait for our choir to assemble, I would like to also share with you a note that we will be having our dedication ceremony. Mr. Steve LeBenz here in a moment will be telling us a little bit more about our Veterans Wall. But at this time, it is my honor to introduce a senior and leader at our high school, who, along with several other students, attended an Armed Forces Thanksgiving luncheon last May to pay tribute to Grand Rapids area veterans and service members. Today, Mr. Sam Vanderriet will represent the student body with a poem and a recitation. Sam.
Good morning. My name is Sam Vanderriet. I'm a senior. I play football and I wrestle. Last May, as Coach Anderson mentioned, he gave me the opportunity to go to the Armed Forces Thanksgiving luncheon with him and a few other classmates of mine. Knowing how grateful I was for that experience, he invited me up here to continue the tradition of reciting the poem In Flanders Fields. In Flanders Fields is a war poem written during the First World War by Canadian physician Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae. His poem references the red poppies that grew over the graves of fallen soldiers, resulting in the remembrance poppy becoming one of the world's most recognized memorial symbols for soldiers who have died in combat. The poem and the red poppy are prominent symbols and widely known in the United States, where it is associated with both Veterans Day and Memorial Day. And now the words of John McCrae and the poem In Flanders Fields. In Flanders Fields the poppies blow, between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky, the larks still bravely singing fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead, short days ago, we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie, in Flanders Fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe, to you from failing hands we throw. The torch be yours to hold it high, if ye break faith with us who die. We shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders Fields.
Thank you, Forest Hill Central Choir. I would now like to introduce one of the men who inspired me to be a teacher and one of the very best educators, in my opinion, and I know the opinion of our community, one of the very best educators in the state of Michigan, Mr. Steve LeBenz, who will tell us about our new Veterans Memorial Wall and dedication.
Thank you. I'm not sure if my AP US students will be saying the same thing after they take their test on the Civil War, but we'll find out how that goes. We mark today with all due reverence and solemnity, but I can't help but think about those exhausted Allied soldiers along Europe's Western Front and the joy and the relief that they had to feel at the end of hostilities in the Great War 101 years ago today. And for us, it's also a time of a very happy milestone with the completion of our Veterans Wall of Honor. Brad Anderson and I first started talking about this a couple years ago, and originally we just hoped to bring some awareness of our athletic history to the rest of the school. This district was established in 1956. Our first graduating class was 1961. I know some of those members are here with us today. And we were on the old California campus. You may have heard some of the love-hate memories from those people who attended back then. Each building housed a few classrooms. You would walk from building to building, even on days like today. Eventually, they figured out that a California campus belongs in California, and they got rid of our campus. We do have some pieces that remain, including the old gym. As we discussed it further, our conversation turned to our head custodian at that time, Homer Spidell, who graduated from here in the mid-1960s and found himself soon thereafter in Vietnam. That changed our perspective from athletics to one of honoring the hundreds of our former students who had served in times of war and of peace, in harm's way or not, and led us to where we are today. Like any large project, there are many people who have been a part of its success, and there are a few people I'd like to thank publicly, and I'd ask that you please hold your applause until I mention them all. We could not have done this without the help of Mike Gilpin and Tim Sinan and the incredible team at Fast Signs for the design and installation of the two walls. They took our many rudimentary ideas and came up with what I think is a stunning display. This is still a work in progress, and Fast Signs will continue to make dog tags for all the veterans from whom we have yet to hear, and we will add them to the display cases. We thought that would make a pretty terrific tribute, but our plans were made even more stunning by the work of Freshwater Digital. Their president and CEO, Matt Downey, heard about our project last year and graciously donated the 55-inch touchscreen, which will help bring to life the stories of all of our veterans. Freshwater Digital's project manager, Alicia Davis, has endured hundreds of emails from Brad and I and cheerfully entered the several hundred pieces of information we provided on our vets and even visited the school a few times to make sure everything was running properly. Tom Carew, a proud 1965 graduate of the old days of Forest Hills High School and an Air Force Vietnam veteran. While he was here at the high school, Tom was a member of the audio-visual class taught by Charles Taylor. Unfortunately, Charles Taylor's son, Donnie, is one of our 5 former students killed in action, but we are lucky that Tom has had a lifelong love of photography, as our database would be so much poorer without his photographic contributions to Donnie's online file, as well as to so many others. Bob Buys, our guest speaker today, proud Navy veteran and a Forest Hills graduate of 1969. With Bob's encouragement, members of his class graciously donated $1,000 toward our remaining balance on the walls, and Bob has been instrumental on spreading the word about the installation. You may have also seen him leading our homecoming parade a few weeks ago while dressed in his uniform and carrying the flag. We are grateful for his guidance and for his enthusiasm. Finally, to the scores of donors who gave money to our cause through our Facebook GoFundMe page. Many of you are with us today, and we literally could not have done this without their help. But we are not quite finished, and we would appreciate any other donation you would see fit. Please, can we have a round of applause for all these people who made this possible today? Next up, I would like to welcome to the stage Bob Buys. As I mentioned, Bob graduated from Forest Hills High School in 1969, and he and his twin brother enlisted in the Navy that fall. After boot camp and training to be an aviation electrician, he got orders to a patrol squadron on the East Coast. While not in combat, he proudly served for 4 years repairing aircraft and flying as a maintenance electrician. Please welcome Bob Buys.
Good morning. Thank you to the staff and the faculty and the students and the wonderful choir and the band. Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here today, and I wear this uniform to honor all veterans, past and present, especially those that didn't come home. I'd like to say to all Vietnam-era veterans, welcome home. Welcome home, brothers. As Steve said, I graduated in 1969, and out of our class, 15 of our classmates chose to enter the service, either by the draft or by enlisting. I'd like to recognize all the veterans here today. Do we have any World War II veterans? Thank you, sir. You know, they're the greatest generation. They served in a war that could have made a difference between us speaking Japanese or German. They won a war. And at World War II veterans, they are passing away at a number of 8,000 vets per day. So there's only a few left. So If you encounter a World War II veteran, please thank them for their service. I'd like to recognize all other veterans, the Army, National Guard, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and of course, Coast Guard. If you guys would please stand, or ladies. Thank you, guys. I don't know if you've ever heard about a Gold Star family. Gold Star family is one that has lost a loved one in a military combat. If there are any Gold Star families here, would you please rise today so you can be recognized? Thank you for your family's sacrifice. I'm a fourth generation military. My grandfather served in the World War I. He grew up on a family farm and he hated to work. So he lied about his age and ran away from home and joined the Army to fight in World War I. I don't think it was too smart, but he survived. The next one is my great uncle. He served in the Army Air Corps in World War II, but he was shot down near the Philippines by the Japanese. I don't know if you ever heard about the Bataan Death March, but he was forced to walk 66 miles in sweltering conditions with no food or water. And if you know anything about that march, if you fell and could not get up, you were shot. So it's a pretty serious thing. He made it to one of the worst prisoner of war camps there was in the Philippines. But he died there in September of 1942. And he was buried in a mass grave. I was contacted by the Department of Defense in 2017, stating that I was one of the only male living relatives to him, and they might require my DNA. The following year, I got a letter from them stating that would I provide my DNA so they could possibly identify his remains. So if his remains are identified, I will be contacted. If they are not identified, I will not be contacted. But I'd be thrilled if someday his remains could be identified and we could give him a proper burial. Next one in my family's military service is my father. He was in the Marine Corps during the Korean War. And I was 6 months old when he came home. My twin brother and I were living at my grandmother's house because our home was not done yet. And my mom was really struggling. But my grandmother used to babysit and do housework for the Ford family in Ada. So she knew Jerry Ford, and of course, he was a congressman then. So she wrote a letter to him asking if there's any way that my dad could come home from Korea early. Well, Jerry pulled some strings, made some phone calls, and my dad came home early from the Korean War. My father never talked about the Korean War until about 50 years later. One day he got out some pictures, started sharing with my brother and I about things that he had seen, things he had done. And my brother and I looked at each other like, whoa, 50 years, and Dad's finally sharing. But it was good for him, and it was good for us. As Steve mentioned, I graduated in '69. My brother and I joined the Navy in that fall and went active in early '70. And in the '60s and '70s, guys had four choices. We could either wait to be drafted, we could take off and go to Canada, as some did, cowards, start college and hope for deferment, or enlist. So We thought we might enlist because we knew the war was not going to be over. I was an aviation electrician's mate in a P3 patrol squadron. We tracked Russian submarines in the Atlantic. And the reason we tracked those subs was Russia was an ally to the North Vietnamese. You know, I'd like to thank the teachers and coaches here at Forest Hills. They're trying to prepare you for life after high school, whether it's college or a career or possibly military service. I think especially sports coaches prepared us to never give up, even when the score was not in our favor, when we felt like giving up or just quitting altogether. Coaches like Mr. Soul, Bunky Van Ark, Paul Nordheis, Mr. Blanchard, and Mr. Matthews. I think they helped prepare us for difficult times during boot camp and training. You know, in the Vietnam War, we lost 58,000. That large number is hard to wrap your mind around, but from 1964 to 73, 58,000 died. And your wall here that we're dedicating today has over 200 names on that wall, and there's more to be added. There's 5 names that were killed in action and 5 wounded in action. And it's been said, all gave some and some gave all. And those 5 killed in action, they gave all. There are only 2 defining forces willing to die for us. Jesus Christ died to save our souls, and the American military was willing to die to save our freedom. As Steve mentioned, freedom is not free. Somebody had to pay for it, whether it's being wounded or giving their very lives. And frankly, I am no hero. I was never in combat. No one was shooting at me, and I was not shooting back. I'd like to mention a few names on that wall there. One of them is Eddie Falk. He graduated here in 1967. He lost a leg in Vietnam. Came home, went to work for the Road Commission. Hardworking guy. But he, along with a lot of Vietnam vets, were subjected to something called Agent Orange. It was a defoliant meant to kill all the foliage so that the enemy wasn't hiding in the jungle. But that also became a poison. Anybody that ingested that has health issues. And Eddie Falk died of lung cancer related to that Agent Orange in 2001. Now, the one of those I'd like to recognize is Bruce Rourke, class of 67. 67 had some really tough guys, and Bruce was one of those. He was wounded in Vietnam, and through his actions, many guys were saved. I talked to Bruce this morning before the assembly, and there's something he gave me, and I'm going to read this twice. I'd like you to ponder these words. For those who chose to fight for it, life was a special flavor. The protected will never know. For those who chose to fight for it, life has a special flavor. The protected will never know. Thank you, Bruce, for what you did. Another one of those on the wall is Jack Zutzma, a friend of mine. He graduated in '68. He was killed in Vietnam. He was the son of Ben and Alice Zutzma, who owned the Thornapple Hardware in Cascade. He enlisted in the Marine Corps right out of high school. He quickly found himself in Vietnam. He did one tour, never came home. He went on R&R and agreed to do a second tour. He was a natural leader, respected by all the men in his unit, including officers. When his platoon ran out of food during the monsoon season, while in the bush, Jack volunteered to hike a long distance to retrieve a helicopter food drop after they had gone without food for 3 days. In early 1970, His platoon was in the bush for 95 days straight. I can't imagine that. All the guys in his unit had jungle rot on their feet, except for Jack. That's just the kind of guy he was. That's how tough he was. A few weeks later, Jack's unit was ordered back into Happy Valley. I'm sure it was not a happy valley, but that's what the Marines called it. The extremely thick vegetation jungle where forward visibility was limited. His unit came under heavy fire, and Jack, trying to save his men, crawled ahead of the point man, and he was shot in the neck by a suspected sniper. He died quickly, and his teammates said he died without pain. I sure hope so. He died before a medevac chopper could land. Jack died on February 17, 1970. He was 19 years old. Next story is about a Gold Star family. I'm not sure if any of the DeHamels are here or not, but the Gold Star family has sacrificed so much for this country. Bill DeHamel was in my class. Both of his older brothers went to Vietnam a year apart. His first brother, Hank DeHamel, was a Marine who arrived in Vietnam in '67. Died in an all-day battle where 13 Marines died and 80 were wounded. He was 22 years old. The following year, almost to the day, in the same location, Bill's other brother, John, was hit by mortar fire in a fierce battle. He was injured so badly, it was feared that he would die before medical help arrived. He waited all night before help did come. But he survived, but he has permanent injuries. One of these brothers was a citizen from the Netherlands, but was willing to serve a country he loved. In 1970, Bill, who obviously was in my class, received a draft notice, and his number was 7. Anybody that knows anything about the draft, if your number is that low, you're going. But his father said, no, not another son. Bill's father contacted Jerry Ford about a possible deferment from the military, and it was granted. You know, that war was a terrible war, and I'm sure some of these veterans can attest to it. When we came home on leave or after our service, we weren't treated very well by civilians. They hated the war, so we represented the war, so they hated us. We got called baby killers, murderers. We were spit at. Some veterans were so upset they threw their uniforms away, they threw their medals away. Some even burned their uniforms. It's because people hated the war so bad, so they hated us. I was hitchhiking one time in 1972 or 73. I had my dress blues on, and I thought, no problem, I'll hitchhike, I can get a ride quickly. I walked for over an hour before a World War II vet picked me up. I was going to miss a flight if I didn't make it back to my base. So that just kind of gives you an idea of what it was like for us guys, and that's why I said, welcome home. All these stories I shared today are about men fighting for our freedom, something we all take for granted. The other graduates' names on the new wall also show their service to this country, and they were fighting in far-off countries for us. This flag, it symbolizes freedom, and wherever that is raised, on a hill in Iwo Jima, or raised again after the towers fell in 9/11, or covers a coffin, it's the flag that all of those names on the wall served under. And I have a challenge for all of you today, especially the students. Today is Veterans Day, but just don't wait for Veterans Day to thank a veteran. If you see someone with a hat on and identifies themselves as a veteran, thank them for their service. If you have a family member or a friend, ask them about their service. Sometimes they'll share, sometimes they won't, depending on their memories. Because lots of times if they have post-traumatic stress disorder, they're not thinking clearly, and bad things could happen from that. So ask them, be there, be a good listener. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak today.
I would like to extend to Bob a sincere thanks for coming. He was integral in spreading the word to so many people and helping us fundraise, not only for the wall, but also for keeping it in perpetuity to make sure that we can add more names. As you exit here, and students, we know that you see it daily and we appreciate your respect in honoring the wall, but veterans and family members, if you're in the hallway and you do see after our dedication ceremony that there's a name missing or someone we need to add or a year needs to be changed, you can certainly contact Mr. Labenza and myself, and we will make sure that we make it right in due time. We thank our honored guests for their attendance today. Forest Hills Central and our community, we appreciate your service and your commitment to our country. Not only the individual service members, but we appreciate your family members who sacrifice so much at home. Your children, your wives, your husbands, your parents and loved ones, we appreciate you as well. To our students, these service members, often you see them in the community, but not always in their uniforms. So make sure that as you go in and out of the grocery store or in and out of the drugstores, that you make sure to be respectful. And when you do see, as Mr. Bob Bai said, if you do see a veteran or you overhear them speaking, thank them. Thank them for their service. We want to thank the American Legion Post 451. They have been integral in getting this ceremony going. We appreciate your help and we appreciate your organization, and it has been an honor for Steve and I to work with you gentlemen. We'd like to thank the team at Fast Signs, specifically Tim Sinan and Mike Gilpin and your family. We thank you for all that you've done to help us achieve our goal. We'd like to thank the team at Freshwater Digital and the Downey family for all that you've done and your team in helping realize our vision. Thank you to the Muskegon Regional Police Pipe and Drum Ensemble for braving the weather this morning. We appreciate that. We thank the FHC Wind Ensemble, the FHC Choir, and of course, the FHC custodial staff for helping us make this all possible. At this time, before our final remarks, I would like to have the American Legion Post retire our colors, please. If you could all stand. You may be seated. Please remain seated during our closing pipe and drum ceremonial tune, Amazing Grace. Following the pipe and drum solo, students, you will return to your second hour classes. Honored guests, you are welcome to join us in the main hallway near the Veterans Wall of Honor for an official dedication ceremony at 10:30 a.m. Again, thank you, students, staff, Muskegon Regional Pipe and Drum Band, and for all of our veterans who attended today. Again, students, you'll be excused to your second hour class. Please make your way there quickly. Veterans, you're welcome to stay behind. We will be having our Veterans Wall ceremony and dedication at 10:30 a.m. in the hallway nearest the wall. Thank you.